Hey, what's going on everybody? Benji Kaiser here today talking about the difference between the Surface Book 2 and the Spectre x360. So these are two highly compared computers in the graphic design industry because they both have the pen touchscreen capability, and that's something that we really only saw in something like a Wacom tablet or an iPad with one of those Apple pens. And they really weren't that responsive. I've had many requests now to do a review on the Spectre versus the Surface Book 2, and so that's coming at you right now. But before we jump into the video, if you have any questions or any comments you have right off the bat, please put those below. If you've yet to subscribe to this channel, I highly recommend doing so. I put out videos in the graphic design industry helping you out with tech, tools, and tips. And if you're curious about other videos, you can check those out in the YouTube cards above or the description below. So the Surface Book 2 and the Spectre x360, if you're curious about the exact models I'm speaking of, you can check out those links in the description below. Those are affiliate links and they do help out this channel if you purchase for them with a small commission to me at no extra cost to you. And I would greatly appreciate you using those as they do keep this channel up and running. So we're going to talk about three different categories today. We're going to talk about responsiveness of the screen, hardware, as well as the build quality. And this will help you really get a grasp on what would be the best computer if you're a graphic designer or even if you're an architect. I've had some architects asking me some questions about the Surface Book 2. First thing we're going to talk about is the screen. That is something that I think is very important to address right away, because why else would you buy the Spectre or the Surface Book? You might go for a Dell XPS 15 or you might go for an MSI GS65. So let's jump into the screen. The screen is really neat. They have really honed in on sensitivity. I was actually sketching on it earlier today and just trying it out, feeling it out, and it has pressure sensitivity, which is really neat in the pen, which is a feature that they have on the Wacom tablet. And so both the screen on the Surface Book 2 and on the x360 are both very responsive. Now the difference between the two is going to be that one screen is 4K and the other one is the pixel sensitive. It's pretty cool. When you zoom in on the pixel sensitive, it continues to stay crisp as it understands exactly what you've been sketching out and what you've been doing. Now, the 4K and the pixel sensitive, which one is better? Well, it depends on what you're doing. If, like myself, you are a graphic designer who's also starting to dabble in digital media and 4K video editing, then the Spectre x360 is going to be your choice because you can see the 4K footage that you're filming, you can edit it very well. If you're going to be more of a graphic designer / illustrator, then the Surface Book 2 will be a good fit for you because it's really responsive. It has a really good palm sensitivity. So what that means is it understands when you rest your palm on the screen that that's not the pen, that's your palm, and it's not going to register and throw off your sketching and your drawing and your logo designs, etc. The screens are both very responsive, very intuitive, and it's only something we've seen in the Wacoms in the past. And that's another video I'm going to do in the near future, is Wacom versus touchscreen with the pen. So keep an eye on that. I'll have it linked up in the YouTube cards above when I get it finished. Okay, so let's talk about build quality now. We're going to talk about the durability, the strength, the styling of each of these computers. Right off the bat, I will say that I gravitate towards the x360. It seems pretty rugged. The hinge looks very strong and durable, whereas on the Surface Book 2, it has kind of this flexy hinge that you push a button to unlock it to lift the screen off. And that's a really cool feature because you can take away the screen and just use that kind of like an iPad and do your sketches. And that is really nice. But what I'm concerned about with that is every time you unlock and relock the screen, I just don't know how long that would be resilient for. So that's just my one concern. Also, you can rotate the screen either way, which is pretty neat. So you can have the screen facing you, and then you can also spin the screen around, lock it back down, and then fold it to where you're holding the entire computer, where you have access to the SD ports, the USB drive, and then double the battery life. So that's one thing I'll say about the build quality is you actually have two batteries in the Surface Book 2, and they guarantee 16 hours of battery life if you're just like watching movies. Now, if you're doing more like intense graphic design work or video editing, I'm sure the battery life would decrease, but that's pretty fantastic that you have two batteries for the Surface Book 2. Whereas in the Spectre 360, you have one battery, and I assume as far as doing graphic design and video editing, the battery is going to last you anywhere from like 6 to 8 hours, depending on what you're doing with the computer. Another thing I'm going to say as far as build quality is concerned is the ports you have directly on the computer. So the Surface Book 2 has less ports. You have an SD card, you have a lightning bolt slot, you have a USB slot, and you have the charger port as well as the headphone jack. Whereas on the Spectre x360, you have the HDMI, you have multiple USB ports, you have the lightning bolt, you have an SD card slot, so there's just more options for you on the side of the Spectre x360. So I hope that gives you a little bit of perspective on build quality as well as styling and ability of each computer. All right, now let's talk hardware. This is where we're going to really get into the bare bones of what you're going to be using this computer for. And this is where I kind of struggled because I'm going to jump right into GPU. So what I found was that the Surface Book 2 comes with a GTX 1060 graphics processing unit. That's on the model I have listed in the description below. And then the Spectre x360 has the MX 150 graphics processing unit by NVIDIA. I'm just gonna have to say that the GTX 1060 blows the MX 150 completely out of the water on basically every benchmark test. So this is where I kind of struggle because you have the 4K screen, you have 16 gigs of RAM, you have the i7 processor, and then you have an MX 150. So that's kind of like what happened. And then you go to the other end and you have the Surface Book, which has 16 gigs of RAM, it has the i7 processor, it has a solid state hard drive, and it has the GTX 1060 graphics processing unit, but it doesn't have a 4K screen. Do you need a 4K screen to do any video editing or any multimedia graphic design work? No, you don't, but it is definitely nice to have when you're doing your editing so you can see exactly what the quality of your footage is. As just mentioned, each computer comes with 16 gigs of RAM, each computer comes with the i7 processor, and solid state hard drive. In conclusion, it really comes down to what you'll be using this computer for. We have two roles in my opinion. You have somebody who's primarily an illustrator who dabbles within graphic design, and then you have somebody who's more of a graphic designer who dabbles in illustration. So if I were you and I were the illustrator, I would lean towards the Surface Book 2. If I were just a straight up graphic designer, I would lean towards the Spectre x360. If you're also going to be dabbling in video editing, then the Surface Book 2 is a great computer to have because the graphics processing unit is one of the best ones on the market as far as within a slim profile laptop at a reasonable price. So that's kind of the gist of the Spectre x360 versus the Surface Book 2. Like I said, if you have any questions, please comment below. If you feel I left anything out, please drop a comment and I would love to address that question or just talk with you about that. Again, I'm Benji Kaiser of BenjiKaiser.com and I will see you here on the next episode.